Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we cut through the noise and get straight to the essential insights you need to be truly well-informed. Climate change discussions can feel incredibly overwhelming.
They really can. So much information, so many warnings.
Exactly. We hear the dire warnings, but it's rare that we get a clear, actionable path forward. Today, we're changing that.
Hopefully.
Our central question for this deep dive is, how do we actually remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere at the immense scale needed to stabilize our planet?
That's right. And to answer that, we're focusing on some crucial findings from a specific paper, Assessment of Technologies and Economics for Carbon Dioxide Removal from a Portfolio Perspective.
Okay, that's quite a title.
It is. But what's groundbreaking about this study is that it doesn't just look at single, isolated solutions for carbon dioxide removal, or CDR. Instead, it explores diverse portfolios of technologies. Think of it like a smart, diversified investment strategy, but, applied to our planet's carbon problem.
Got it. A portfolio approach. So our mission today is to unpack this. The real-world feasibility, the surprising potential, and maybe the remarkably manageable cost of scaling up carbon removal.
That's the plan.
By the end of this deep dive, you'll have a comprehensive yet totally digestible understanding of what it truly takes to reach incredibly ambitious climate goals, like limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees C, or even pushing for a more secure 1.0 degrees C. Let's dive in.
Let's do it.
We have to start with the stark reality, and it's one we know, but it bears repeating. Global warming is definitively driven by human activity.
No question there.
And it's continuously distorting Earth's natural carbon cycle. What's truly striking is that despite decades of warnings and deep knowledge about these hazardous effects, global human-caused CO2 emissions have actually doubled in the last 3 decades alone.
Doubled. It's quite something. It's a testament to the scale of the challenge we face.
Absolutely.
And this raises a critical question. Is simply reaching net zero CO2 emissions by 2050 going to be enough?
That's what we hear all the time, right? Net zero by 2050.
Exactly. But scientific consensus, particularly from researchers like Hansen and Rockstrom, suggests it might not be. For genuine climate safety, we may need to aim for an atmospheric CO2 concentration of around 350 parts per million.
350 ppm. Okay, what does that mean in terms of temperature?
To put that in perspective, that corresponds to a 1.0 degrees C target, which is far more ambitious than the 1.5 degrees C goal many are familiar with.
Right. 1.0 degrees C is significantly tighter. So to be super clear then, carbon dioxide removal isn't the silver bullet. It doesn't let us off the hook from reducing emissions.
Absolutely not. It's not a replacement. It's a vital complement. We absolutely must slash emissions. Full stop.
Okay.
But CDR is necessary to invest those unavoidable emissions, the ones we can't easily eliminate with current technology, and crucially, to actively decrease the CO2 already piled up in the atmosphere.
Right, the historical stuff too.
Precisely. Because if we delay action further, we risk severe irreversible consequences, including catastrophic climate tipping point events.
Those CTPs, those critical thresholds beyond which Earth systems can just abruptly reorganize, often for the worse.
Yeah, things we really want to avoid. And that's precisely why this study's approach is so innovative.
How so?
Instead of narrowly focusing on just a few negative emission technologies or nets like bioenergy with carbon capture and sequestration, that's BECCS, or traditional afforestation.
Which have limits, right?
They often have deployment limitations. This study explores over 25 different CDR technology routes.
25, okay.
And the real innovation lies in creating flexible portfolios tailored to various societal preferences, moving beyond a one-size-fits-all solution.
It sounds like we're not just talking about planting trees here, are we? What are some of the other, perhaps less intuitive ways this study looks at capturing carbon?
You're right, it's far more expansive. This study highlights 3 main pathways for CO2 removal. First, we have weathering processes.
Weathering, like rocks.
Exactly. Imagine taking certain metal-bearing rocks, crushing them up, spreading them out, and letting them naturally react with CO2 from the air, but supercharged. This is called enhanced weathering, or EW.
Huh. So you speed up what rocks do naturally?
Pretty much. And the magic here is that the CO2 gets permanently locked into solid carbonate minerals, stable for geological timescales. We're talking millions of years.
Wow, millions. So it's locked away for good.
Essentially, yes. To give you a sense of scale, it takes about 1.8 to 7.1 tons of rock to sequester just 1 ton of CO2 this way.
That's truly fascinating, turning atmospheric carbon into solid rock. What about the other two pathways?
Next, we have photosynthesis-based solutions. Here, we're primarily talking about biomass-based solutions like, well, growing trees.
The classic approach.
Right. Biomass naturally takes up atmospheric CO2, acting as a form of carbon storage. However, their storage lifetime is relatively short, often only hundreds of years.
And fire risk.
And there are inherent fire risks, exactly, as we've tragically seen with recent wildfires. Within this pathway, the study also examines BECCS, which we mentioned.
Bioenergy with carbon capture.
Yep, where biomass is used for energy, and the CO2 emissions are then captured. And then there's biochar production, or BC,
Biochar.
where biomass is heated without oxygen pyrolysis, creating a stable carbon-rich material that can be added to soil, locking up carbon for a longer period than just, say, letting the wood rot.
Interesting. So one is mimicking rock processes, the other leverages plants. What's the third pathway?
The third pathway is sorption, and this is best exemplified by direct air capture, or DAC.
DAC. Okay. I've heard a lot about this one.
Yeah, it's getting a lot of attention. This is essentially technology that acts like a giant specialized vacuum cleaner for the atmosphere.
Pulling CO2 right out of the air.
Exactly. It uses various chemical or physical methods to directly capture CO2 from the ambient air, producing a highly concentrated stream of CO2.
And then what do you do with the concentrated CO2?
Good question. Once captured, this concentrated CO2 can then be utilized for other industrial purposes, or, more importantly for climate, put into long-term sequestration, often deep underground, much like the CO2 captured from BECCS.
Okay, so three main routes: weathering, photosynthesis, and sorption like DAC. So this study doesn't just list these technologies, it puts them under the microscope.
Mm-hmm.
How exactly do they evaluate such diverse approaches? What are the key performance indicators they're looking at?
Yeah, they look at several crucial metrics. First, the maximum potential for CO2 removal each technology offers. Then, the levelized cost of CO2 removal, basically the total cost per ton over a project's lifetime.
Cost is always key.
Always. Then, the energy demand, both final energy like electricity and primary energy like the fuel needed to make that electricity.
Right.
Also, the area requirement.
RAN use, right?
Big factor.
Yeah.
How mature the technology is, that's the technology readiness level, or TRL, and perhaps most importantly, the long-term security of the stored carbon.
Right.
How likely is it to stay put?
Right. That's crucial.
It's a truly comprehensive assessment, moving beyond just simple cost calculations.
That makes sense. Yeah. So looking at those metrics, what were the most surprising or impactful quantitative findings from this study? Where do these technologies truly shine or, falter?
A key insight emerges when we look at global sequestration potential. Most negative emission technologies typically have a maximum potential in the range of 1 to 5 gigatons of CO2 per year.
Okay, 1 to 5 gigatons, that's still a lot, but maybe not enough globally.
Well, compared to what might be needed, yes.
Yeah.
But here's where it gets interesting. Direct air capture with electricity-based silicon carbide production, or DACOSI.
DAC.KC. Okay.
It's projected to have a considerably higher potential. This is due to its high scalability and, crucially, a lack of external limits like land or sustainable biomass availability.
So it's less constrained.
Exactly. DACI's global annual potential is estimated to be between 0.5 to 5.0 gigatons of CO2 per year by 2050, but then potentially a staggering 0.0 to 40.0 gigatons per year by 2100.
40 gigatons. Wow. That's a huge number. How does that compare to, say, BECCS?
In stark contrast, BECCS potential is notably limited by how much biomass we can sustainably grow and the land use implications that come with it. That's a major bottleneck.
That's a significant difference. So DT sounds like it has immense potential, but what about the cost? Is it prohibitively expensive? We hear that a lot.
It's a common concern. Right now, direct air capture with carbon sequestration, or DACCS, costs range widely, yes. The study shows an average around 275 euros per ton of CO2 currently.
Okay, that's not cheap.
No, but this study projects a significant future decrease. They're projected to drop to as low as 32 euros per ton by 2050 in some cases.
32, that's a massive drop.
It is, and this could make it fully cost competitive with BECCS, which is also projected to see cost reductions maybe down to 34 euros per ton by 2050.
So they could be neck and neck on cost.
Potentially, yes. Interestingly, while some advanced DSA applications, like those producing valuable products like electricity-based carbon fiber, ECF, or silicon carbide, ECXE, have high initial costs.
The sales of those products can significantly offset these costs. In fact, the study suggests ECF could potentially become profitable by 2050.
Profitable carbon removal. That's a game changer.
It could be. And just to round it out, on the biological side, rainfall-based afforestation, just planting trees where rainfalls can emerge as the least cost solution, but only after several decades of growth.
So costs are coming down, potentially dramatically for Daisy. What about energy demand? Do these processes consume a huge amount of power?
That's another key factor. For certain DC approaches, like one called DACE, the final energy demand is projected to decrease by about a third by 2050, thanks to efficiency improvements.
So they're getting better.
Yes. And for something like desalination-based afforestation, AFDB, that's planting trees using desalinated water, which is fully electrified, its energy demand actually decreases as the trees mature and sequester more carbon.
Oh, interesting. So the trees do more work over time.
Right. So yes, energy is required, but efficiency gains in nature's processes help manage that demand. And area demand. I imagine that's a huge factor, especially for nature-based solutions versus the tech-heavy ones.
This is a particularly crucial point revealed in the study. Biogenic technologies, like that rainfall-based afforestation, AFRF, demand significantly more land.
How much more?
Think hundreds, even thousands of square kilometers for just 1 megaton of CO2 removed annually. Desalination-based afforestation, AFDB, also requires substantial land.
Thousands of square kilometers.
Okay. Now compare that to DAX-based technologies, like that Daxon example, which require an incredibly compact area, barely more than a square kilometer, for the same megaton of CO2 annually.
1 square kilometer versus thousands.
Exactly. And this holds true even when you factor in the land needed for their energy supply, like solar farms or wind turbines. This difference in land footprint is a potential game changer.
That's a stark contrast in land use. Finally, how mature are these technologies and how secure is the carbon once it's captured? What are their technology readiness levels and long-term security?
Good question. Most CDR approaches currently average a TRL of 6.
TRL 6. So, mostly demonstration phase, not fully commercial scale yet.
Generally, yes. Development or demonstration phases. Reforestation, however, being an older practice, is seen as more mature, with a TRL of 8.
Makes sense. And security. How safe is the stored CO2?
For security, this study emphasizes that CO2 stored in solid materials through processes like mineralization or locked into products like ESIC and ECF has essentially a 0% risk of leakage.
Zero risk. That's optimal.
That offers the most permanent solution. For CO2 stored deep underground through geological sequestration, the study assumes a carbon efficiency of about 98% after 10,000 years in well-regulated sites.
98% is pretty good, but...
But it's important to note, this comes with a degree of uncertainty. Site selection and management are critical.
Okay, this is where it gets incredibly insightful, I think. This study isn't just about individual technologies, it's about putting them together strategically. They've innovatively created CDR portfolios based on hypothetical societal preferences, like a portfolio that prioritizes low-cost solutions versus one that wants high security.
Exactly. They modeled different ways society might choose to balance these competing factors.
So what did they find when they mixed and matched these technologies to meet different goals? What makes it into the optimal mix?
The insights into these portfolio compositions are truly eye-opening, and they really deliver a potentially significant shift in how we might think about carbon removal strategy.
Right.
What stands out is that in situ and ex situ mineralization options, basically, locking CO2 into rocks on-site or elsewhere, are deployed first in almost all portfolios.
Light them first.
Because of their compelling combination of low cost, low energy, and area demand, and crucially, that high security turning CO2 into rock.
Right, the permanence factor.
Exactly. Geological sequestration options storing CO2 underground are also heavily deployed due to similar benefits, assuming good sites. And desalination-based afforestation also plays a major role in most portfolios.
Okay, so the rock-solid solutions and planting trees with desalination are getting a lot of love, pun maybe intended. But what about direct air capture and the older favorites like BECCS? How do they stack up in these portfolios?
Okay, here's the crucial part and maybe the most surprising finding for many. Direct air capture, or DSC, is actually preferred in every portfolio by 2050.
Every portfolio.
With the sole exception of the purely low-cost focused portfolio.
Wow. Why is DSC so favored across the board?
The This often leads to DS displacing traditional bioenergy-based capture, like BECCS, because DSC offers superior security in terms of long-term carbon efficiency, while having very similar projected costs and energy demands by 2050.
Better security for similar cost and energy.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and this finding dramatically contrasts with many traditional integrated assessment models, the big climate models, that have historically relied very heavily on BECCS.
So the models might need updating based on this.
This study certainly suggests that. What's even more remarkable is that traditional favorites like BECS and rainfall-based afforestation are not deployed at all in the balanced high-security or low-area portfolios in this study's analysis.
Not deployed at all. Why not?
It indicates significant drawbacks in key parameters like area demand and that long-term storage security for these options when you look at them within a broader portfolio context, trying to balance multiple goals. It suggests the focus might need to shift or at least broaden significantly.
That's a huge takeaway. A real potential shift away from relying so heavily on BECCS and simple tree planting in planning. So if DEACE is rising and BECCS is potentially falling in favor within these diverse portfolios, what does this all mean when we talk about the grand scale of tackling climate change?
Right, the big picture.
This study outlines the total negative CO2 emissions required by 2100, a monumental 500 gigatons of CO2 for the 1.5 degrees C target, and an even more ambitious 1,750 gigatons for the 1.0 degrees C target. Those numbers sound staggering.
They are huge numbers, absolutely.
But let's put them into context for our global economy. Can we actually afford this?
And this is where the economic implications truly become striking and perhaps surprisingly manageable. Funding a 1.0 degrees C target, for instance, the more ambitious one, requires only a surprisingly small fraction of the projected global gross domestic product, about 0.42% to 0.65%.
Less than 1% of global GDP.
Yes. To put that into perspective, a low-cost portfolio for that 1.0 degrees C target might cost around 2.3 trillion euros annually by mid-century.
Okay, 2.3 trillion euros. Still sounds like a lot of money.
It is, but now compare that to current global annual military expenses, which are around 2.1 trillion US dollars per year, very similar ballpark.
So the cost of CDR for a safe climate pathway is comparable to what the world already spends on the military each year.
Exactly. And for a 1.5 degrees C target, it's significantly less. The study estimates up to maybe 24% of current military expenses.
That comparison really puts it in perspective.
It does. Furthermore, these annual CDR costs, representing, 0.4, 0.6% of global GDP, equate to a very manageable 1.2% to 1.9% of the globally generated taxes, based on current average tax rates.
So it's not like it would consume the entire global tax base or anything close.
Not even remotely. It suggests this isn't an insurmountable financial burden.
Okay, that's powerful. But what about the energy demand for this grand scale? For that ambitious 1.0 degrees C target, these CDR portfolios would necessitate between 12.0% and 37.5% more primary energy compared to a scenario without CDR.
Right, there is an energy cost.
That upper end, 37.5%, sounds like a lot, but the study finds that no portfolio requires more than 13.3% additional primary energy demand, with only a couple of specific exceptions tied to certain tech choices.
Correct. The central finding is that for most well-balanced portfolios, the additional energy demand is closer to that lower end, around 13%.
And is a 13% increase in global primary energy demand considered manageable?
Within the context of the massive energy system transition already needed for decarbonization, yes, an additional 13% dedicated to CDR is considered quite manageable, especially spread over decades. It requires planning, but it doesn't break the energy bank. So if we connect this back to the bigger picture, the overarching message from this study is one of clear feasibility.
Right.
It suggests that large-scale carbon dioxide removal is indeed possible, potentially removing those 500 to 1,750 gigatons of CO2 by 2100 to meet our critical climate targets.
Possible, technically.
And crucially, this can likely be financed without an outsized or impossible burden on the global economy. It's a testament to the idea that the solutions are within our grasp if we choose to prioritize them.
So to wrap up our deep dive into the assessment of technologies and economics for carbon dioxide removal from a portfolio perspective, the core takeaway seems clear. We have a tangible, multifaceted path to tackling climate change.
It's not just wishful thinking.
Right. It's not about finding one magic bullet to solve everything, but rather building a smart, diverse portfolio of solutions like the study suggests that, when strategically deployed and scaled up, can truly make a difference in securing our planet's future.
And this raises an important question, maybe a provocative one for everyone listening. Considering the immense costs and risks of inaction, which can lead to severe, irreversible consequences, and those disastrous climate tipping point events we talked about,
Uh-huh.
how can we as a society ensure these technically and economically feasible CDR pathways, these portfolios, are prioritized and implemented with the urgency they clearly demand? What role will you play in advocating for or understanding this crucial next step for a safe, just, and livable planet?